and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to bring you the latest and greatest data on the premium pet food packaging market and consumer insights. My name is Michelle Souter, and I'm the Marketing Director for Dow's Food and Specialty Packaging business. And we're sitting here today in PAC Studios, and I'm very excited to be joined by Chris. Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Michelle. Thank you. Yes, my name is Chris Simmers. I am the Vice President of Technical Services for Mondi North America.
So, Chris, first, we have to start with the most important question. Do you have any pets?
I do.
And
I
please
have
tell us.
two Yorkies, and they are part of the family. For
Names?
Sure. The oldest is Gracie, and the youngest would be Zelda.
Oh, that's terrific. Cats are my thing. Dogs are a little more responsibility than I'm ready for. So I have two cats. One is Milo, and the other is Cat GPT, because I'm a big fan of AI.
Yes.
So I think that just shows how related and connected we are to the pet food packaging market. Objective here was really to bring a third year of data. Dow and Mondi have been partnering on this for over 4 years now. And now that we have this third data point, it is really starting to be able to show the trends and how things are changing or not changing with the consumer and in relation to the pet food packaging market. So our intent is really just to talk about those trends and what's new and how they've changed over the past 4 years.
Yeah, so to go a little bit deeper into what we did in this third round, so the research method, basically a 15-minute online quantitative survey that was taken, was focused on the premium pet food market. Sample size for 2023 was 750 premium pet food buyers, and again, this was focused strictly on the premium pet food buyers.
Do you want to share how we define premium pet food?
Yes, so yeah, talking to the premium type brands, they are listed on the slide at the bottom there that you can go through, but really focused on the Royal Canin, the Hills Pet Nutrition, some of those type of brands that form that market.
So let's take a look at some of the demographics. Some really interesting trends here are pointed out. The first one I'll just call out is single and no kids, which made sense to me because people are waiting longer to get married, and maybe you're gonna try your parenting skills with pets instead of kids, which probably is not a bad approach.
Right.
But it was also strange and wondering about your thoughts on the uptick of unemployed people and high school or below or less. Thoughts or comments about those trends?
Yeah, and so the data showed the trends did shift up, and there was enough for a statistical shift in those areas. And some of that, I think, also comes back to the fact of the change in waiting to get married at a later date, the change in our markets, and maybe today college isn't the first choice for some of the younger parents and kids out there. So you were seeing a larger percentage of those people in that demographic.
Through the survey, there was a good set of questions, but today we're really going to try to get to some of the critical takeaways. Things like what's changed over time, as we mentioned. We'll talk a little bit about consumer perception of sustainability, and then talk about packaging, which is near and dear to both of us, and how the features and satisfaction and importance is changing.
Yeah, and with that, so kind of the executive summary of what we're going to talk about throughout the rest of this presentation. Really the need for freshness in premium packaging and how that has really risen to the top and maintained to be very important for the consumers out there. With that as well, just the focus on sustainability, and that it truly has become table stakes. It's no longer something that differentiates or sets that brand aside. It's an expectation today. The next area that we'll really focus on is to kind of talk about the trends and what has happened coming forward with the different channels. So kind of mass has been leading the way over our last two sessions.
What are the biggest changes since 2019? Not surprisingly, price has been pretty consistent as an important role. I think with the inflation that we've seen and just the uncertainty in the economy with COVID and everything else, I think that that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned sustainability impact becoming more table stakes, which I think is important, but I also think sustainability is a moving target, right? And it's always changing consumers' perceptions of what's sustainable and what's not and what that really means. So there's some good data in here about how to interpret that and what implications that might bring.
Yeah, I think it's really showing the importance of really understanding what the scorecard is and the definition and the roles that you and I play in that market to make sure consumers understand what is important, what is sustainability, and understanding what's important to them.
Absolutely, and it is changing quickly. You mentioned about the channel behaviors. The shift towards mass stores has declined, which I was a little bit surprised about.
Yeah, it has declined, but it is still the kind of the leading factor. And again, I think that comes back to the economy, comes back to a little bit more focus on price.
So the demographics kind of play into that.
Exactly. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit more detail about some of the changes that have occurred since 2019. This one makes total sense to me that the two most important things haven't really changed. And the top one is really, does my cat or dog like this? So that is absolutely critical. And then brand value and just brand recognition. And is it a brand that I trust? And then at the bottom, I mean, things have been relatively stable. It's just kind of in that middle part where there's some mix and shifting, but and nothing maybe too extreme, or I don't know if there's any points that you wanted to call out in that area.
Yeah, I think to your point, I mean, the interesting thing that stood out to me is the fact that the top two remain the top two across all the way since 2019. And ultimately, the pet has to like the brand. That is the most important.
And price was sort of in the middle of that list, and it's not surprising. We already mentioned inflation and some of the other economic drivers that the importance of price is rising. And from the data, the way that that's taking shape is that consumers are buying smaller package sizes, and that's helping them with their budget. I only have so much money. I'm not going to buy the big bag of dog food. Maybe I'll buy the smaller one.
Yeah, and I think that helps support the trend that we talked about with the mass still leading, because they have that option in that channel. I think the other important part on this one is the last group of bars, because it does carry a heavy weight up in the mid 70% ranges, the fact of keeping the food fresh. So it ultimately comes back to the pet has to like the food and trust the food will be the same each time.
Yeah. I know as we work on packaging, design packaging, we talk a lot about palatability testing, and they have very sensitive senses, and
for sure.
yeah, they'll catch something if it's off right away.
Absolutely.
So I think that feeds into your point about the freshness and keeping it fresh and extending the shelf life and making sure it's the same every time.
And that comes back to our world, the importance of controlling those, making sure they're repeatable and doing them the right way each time.
This one, the topic about having packaging stand out on the shelf and easy to read graphics, I translated that a bit because of demographic shifts potentially. If you've got older populations who are in the store trying to find the right information, or does it have this ingredient or not, I think that will continue to be important. I have to tell you, I recently went to the store to look at kitten food. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I was a little overwhelmed. I mean, there's all kinds of claims, all different types, and it took me a while to kind of pinpoint the one that I was looking for and the information that I was looking for.
And I think this helps support those importance that we're going to see a little further along, the fact of the legibility, the clear print, and the pet parents today really care about what the ingredients are. And the better that the package supplier, the brands can deliver that message and clearly repeat it every time on the shelf becomes that much more important.
Yeah, and making it stand out. So we talked a little bit about the clear nutritional information and keeping the food fresh in the package. That definitely has been a recurring theme.
So that kind of touches on a couple of different aspects from my world. So that comes into the importance of the printing, the quality, and the repeatability, and the package design. So then delves into your world some of the materials that are used, making sure that that pet food is fresh, keeps its flavor, keeps its moistness throughout its life.
Absolutely. We spend a lot of time talking about shelf life and how do we optimize that for the package format that it's in. In the bottom tier, it was interesting to me, easy to carry, wasn't as important, again, potentially driven by the fact that I'm not buying as big a bag, or if I am buying a large bag, maybe I'm getting it at e-commerce or I'm having it delivered home, which honestly,
Exactly.
that's the way to go. There's a lot of subscription services out there, as you know.
Yeah, I think you're properly identifying that asset. I think that's a piece of that shifting to smaller packaging formats, and maybe the easy to carry features aren't quite as important as what they were 2 to 3 years ago.
Sure. So this kind of breaks down the more detailed view of how these trends have changed from 2019 until present. Again, top tier, very consistent. On the bottom tier, it's kind of the same. So it's just really in the middle, there's been some shifting and some changes. Anything specific that caught your eye from that perspective?
And although there is some shifting, I think they stayed in the same categories. So I don't see a lot here that really moved the needle, I would say.
And I mean, this is why you do trends, right?
Right.
You're not always going to see big shifts and changes. Sometimes you're just reconfirming that your original data set was correct and that consumers' buying behaviors and importance hasn't shifted. This, I think, is a really good one, and I'll extend the clean label from our own personal, like, what do I want to put in my body, is now seems to be branching over into the pet food space of what am I feeding my pet, and is it safe, and does it contain anything that I might be concerned about?
Yeah. Well, I think when you asked me the question about my pets, I'm sure you've probably seen the reaction in my face. They truly are part of our family now.
Yeah.
And that's something that has continued to change and become, I think, even more of a priority for all pet parents. And that's really reflects that in this data.
Yeah, and so just like we're reading the labels on the food that we eat, I'm now doing the same for my 3-month-old kitten. So now switching maybe closer to our world on the packaging side and features, the clear nutritional labels, this comes up in that information, they're easy to read, easy to carry. I was surprised that ability to reclose is there on the bottom, but it looks like satisfaction is increased.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why it's moved a little bit down the scale, because the satisfaction level has increased over the 4 years now. And the other interesting thing I'd bring attention to is the picture on the right. So the fact that when we started this research in 19, it was very common that consumers were placing the product in another container at home. So for a brand, that's very important because they're losing that identity once they're placing it in a different container. So maybe they don't recall what that next brand is when they go back to repurchase it. And we're really seeing that shift away. Some of that may be because of different sizes and now purchasing a smaller size, but it's interesting to see how that's developed over the time.
Yeah, I agree. So sustainability, this is affecting every category and pet food is no different. The overall, I really love these slides about comparing the impact of an attribute to how satisfied a consumer is with it. So lots of great progress in general on the 2019 survey. So type of material, high impact, and have also made some improvements on satisfaction, improvements on written recycling instructions. I think that's showing that consumers are even more satisfied now, means that we're making progress on those 2025 goals.
That's right, yeah.
And trying to increase the recyclability of packaging, which is something that we both spend a ton of time on.
Yeah, and I think this helps just support what we've talked about, Michelle, the fact that the satisfaction level is going up. Therefore, some of that is just becoming truly table stakes. So it's expected that that's already there. Now we're getting deeper into the details of what sustainability means and what it means to the consumer.
But sustainability claims has declined, so the impact of them is not as high. Again, back in 2019, probably there was only a handful of brands who were putting sustainability claims on, so that made them really stand out.
Right.
And now everyone else is sort of caught up, and so it's not quite as
It's become an
different.
expectation.
Yeah,
Really has,
everyone
yeah.
expects you to have it. I know we added carbon neutral packaging there on the bottom. That's probably a few years away, but I know when I fly, I'm hearing about carbon, so we'll have to continue this study and see how carbon starts to evolve in the minds of consumers and when that will start to hit.
Yeah, and I think that thought process gets back to we really need as an industry to define the scorecard, and we've got to work toward that.
Yeah. So this one I just reinforces the point about sustainability is table stakes, and so as a brand, if you want to be successful, you've got to be meeting your consumers' expectations and thinking about what's next, what's beyond that, and how can you find new delighters to differentiate yourself on shelf.
Yeah, clearly, I mean, the brand impression and the brand trust there are very high percentages. So those are definitely categories that we must focus on.
Thinking about the future, this is our third year of data, so we'll have to look again in a few years and see how this has changed. Definitely sustainability will continue to morph.
For sure.
And it will be interesting to see what consumers are looking for next. You mentioned some great points about awareness about ingredients and safety. The other point I was just going to mention here was on meat packaging, for example. A lot of brands have started to come out and tell the story about this is where your meat came from, this is the farm where the cows were grown, or et cetera. And I think the transparency of that is something that in pet food, consumers probably would react to as a differentiator of, oh, I know where this comes from. Mm-hmm. I feel confident about buying it and feeding it to my pet.
Yeah, I think that really leads into even that second question there as well. I mean, the challenge is going to be how do we drive that and show that as a differentiator, not only from the manufacturer, but also from the brand.
If you want to reach out to us, if you have further questions or you want to have a discussion about some of the thought starters, we would love to hear from you. So please reach out to us on LinkedIn. There's some QR codes on the screen, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a great day.